Now, Toby, I hear you wonder, what's the point of this? Like, what is going on here? And to that, my friend, I say, if this video hasn't given you PTSD yet, then this video is what you should absolutely watch right now. So initially I was planning like a very comprehensive macros guide, for all classes, all different types of macros, mouse over, stance dancing, blah blah blah, all that shit. But then when I actually started thinking about it, I kind of realized that holy shit, I actually need to do some research. Yeah, so that's not happening. So instead I'll just focus on warriors. So let's just head into the game, and this is how actually my UI looks. And as you can see, just about every single skill is macro. There are a few exceptions, like cleave, like heroic strike, like death wish. The only reason why these skills are not macro is because I need to use them in every single stance as they are. So sometimes I need to use death wish in defensive, sometimes in berserker. It kind of depends on my role in the specific raid or whatever. Other than that, just about every single button is fucking macroed. Whether it's a very simple macro, like for example, where's Thunder Armor? There we go. It's a super simple armor. Or it's something a tad more complicated, like this clusterfuck of a macro charge. But everything is fucking macroed, and it achieves many things. Not only I don't need to remember all the fucking different bindings for so many skills, I can just do, like shift modifier macros and just have all three shouting kind of buttons in the UI. If I press shift, like a bunch of skills over here change. If I press control, another one changes. So not only I don't need to remember more different key bindings, I also clean up my UI. Now, again, warriors have 3 fucking stances. That's a lot of skills. And if you just put all of them here, they will fucking explode. Obviously, I don't want that, so that's why I use macro. Lastly, there's, not even convenience, it goes beyond that. For example, if you look at taunt, whenever you need to taunt, and especially if you're a Zug and when I say Zug, I'm referring to DPS warriors, obviously. So if you're a Zug and you need to taunt something, that means shit goes south. That means shit went south and you need to taunt it now. So if you first need to find that, okay, which button is the defensive stance? Alright, this one. And now which button is the taunt one? I haven't used it in a long while. Oh, I found it, this one. It takes a long time. And especially when taunt is not on global cooldown. So when I need to taunt something, I just fucking find my taunt button and then I fucking smash it. That's it, I've taunted. Good job, Toby, your job is done, you just saved the raid, woohoo! And that's, by the way, how you get all your raids to fucking love you even though you're a Zug. So, just fucking macro stuff, it's really super helpful. Now, going into the meat and bones of this video, the pizza and pineapple stuff, I will want to kind of give this video some sort of structure, so I will do it in 3 parts. The first one will be the easy stuff, the very easy, simple macros, the kind of one-liners. The next part will be the stance dancing, basically a bit more complicated macros. And then I'll wrap things up by just going the exact macros that I have over here in my UI, how they function and how I just combined, a bunch of different things into a single button. So to start things off, the most simple macro possible yet super useful is start attack. I probably don't need to tell you what it does. It makes your attack start. So right now I have 2 buttons, 2 Thunder Armors in my UI. If I just press Thunder Armor, all it does is select a target. If I do the macroed one, it starts attacking. That's it. That's all you need to know. It's a super useful macro. Oh my god. There we go. So just fucking use it in a lot of these abilities, basically with this one. In general, you want to use this with every single ability with which you start your rotation. Next up, we have removing some trash buffs, so this is especially important for tanks. Tanking with salvation probably isn't the brightest idea, and having like your paladins continuously spam you and whisper, hey, please remove salvation, it just gets annoying. So just make a fucking macro and that's it. If you're a Zug, this is kind of relevant when you pick up all the world buffs and you're ready to fucking Zug to the limit, and then you get, some few too many hots, and then suddenly, oh look, my DMT buffs got pushed off. So for Zugzugs, this is only relevant when you're approaching the buff cap, which is 32. It's pretty hard to do that, but nevertheless, it is possible. So just put it on some abilities. By the way, the way this works, I have this macro over here, so I have Arcane Intellect over here. If I press this macro, that's it. It's gone. It's / cancel aura, aura's name. It's super simple. And you basically want to use this macro with abilities like these. In a nutshell, the abilities that you spam the most, not necessarily open with, but just spam the most, just to increase the odds of removing them whenever they get put on you immediately. Now this next macro is actually where things start to kind of get a bit more interesting. So it's a target mouse over macro, which effectively allows you to cast an ability, a spell, whatever, on a different target than you currently have selected. So for example, if I select this target, don't talk to me, and I just press non-macro charge, obviously nothing fucking happens. If I hover over Luca and press charge, obviously nothing happens. If I don't have a target, nothing fucking happens at all. If you have a macro, however, I can have this guy selected, right? So this is like a fucking raid boss, you know, I'm bashing it and shit. Where's my, there, I'm starting attacking, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly I need to charge like this mob or intercept or like interrupt, whatever. I just press my macro. Fuck, wrong stance. I just press my macro, voila, I charge. The interesting thing about this is that you actually don't even switch the targets. For rogues, by the way, you effectively do switch the target, even if it's for a fraction of a second. So as a rogue, you will lose combo points. For warriors, you don't have combo points, so who cares really? The syntax is very simple, and I wouldn't say that it's the most useful macro in PvE. I do have it on a few skills of mine, but I don't think I ever use it. Maybe it just doesn't fit my playstyle, I have no idea. But for PvP, you know, I can imagine it being super useful with skills like these, basically like interrupts where you need to react immediately, and it's really like, you don't necessarily want to switch your target, you want to continue focusing your right one, but interrupts another one. I'd like to get into the next macro, but there's a fucking mage over here who really wants something. Anyway, so this next macro is a, again, kind of simple one. It's a change your gear macro. So for example, right now I have /equip and items name. So if I press this macro, it voila, equips your shield. Now this does get a bit dumb when it comes to weapons, because weapons can go into both main hand and offhand slots. So for example, if I change the Aegis of the Blood God into a weapons name, I know I have Mira Song in my inventory. So if I press this macro again, it equips Mira Song into the main hand. However, me being the tank, I want to use this as an offhand. I want to continue using, you know, Warblade of the Hikari, and I want this item to go into the offhand. So what I do instead, to achieve that, you gotta change, instead of equip items name, you gotta go equip slot, then the slot's number, and then, you know, the item. So if I press this macro right now, voila, fucking magic, it goes to a different slot. Anyway, so every single item slot effectively has an slot number. A quick Google will pretty much show you the results within a few seconds. There is one scenario that I found where this doesn't exactly work like that, and it's specifically with the source that I have, which is, you know, why I found out, Warblades of the Hikari. So the main hand of the Warblade of the Hikari is called the Warblade of the Hikari. Confusing, I know. Now the offhand is also called Warblade of the Hikari, so the names are identical. So if I do, let's quickly switch into my shield and Kelsarar, and if I do equip Warblade of the Hikari, and I do equip Warblade of the Hikari, and I press this macro, only one of them gets switched. If I press again, both of them get switched. Well, the second one. And I don't want that. I want this to happen instantaneously. I want both of them to be switched immediately. So you might be thinking, okay, so let's do equip slot 17, equip slot, where is it, 18? And now try to do this macro. Oh, it actually works. Last time it didn't work. Cool, but either way, this is buggy as fuck. I think it like checks your bag for which weapon is like higher or lower, and if this number is correct, then you know it equips it. Otherwise, it just throws an error, and that's it. You won't go anywhere with this macro. So for Warblades of the Hakari, you actually want to modify this macro even further. And this is the macro that I'm using, so if I quickly go back to my shield and Kelsarar and use this macro with item IDs, please fucking mage, get the fuck out of my sights. Anyway, so now this works. So one more time, let me go back to my weapons and I use this macro. Both of them get switched instantaneously. So in this case, you don't even need to use equip item slot. All you have to do is use item ID. And item ID is something that is like generally useful not only for macros, but for, well, let's say weak core, as this is, I think, where it's especially useful. So every single weapon, you know, just item, skill, ability, aura, whatever, all of them have their IDs. Even something like a free action potions effect has an ID. And you want to be using them in some cases. So the way you find those is you just go to Classic DB or Wowhead, you find that item, and in the URL you will find the item's ID. That's pretty simple. So to wrap things up regarding the gear changing, there are a few macros, there are a few skills with which I would suggest using them, so here's the list of them. So with all the simple macros out of the way, we can get into the, you know, meat and bones, the pineapple and pizza of this video, which is stance dancing. And there are like two ways you can do it, sort of. Fuck knows, they're kind of the same, but you know, same but different, whatever. So the first one is which you will use in just about every single skill. It's a macro where you specify in which stance you want to use the skill. So in this case, I want to use Berserker Rage when I'm in stance 3, which is Berserker stance. Otherwise, I will use the skill called Berserker Stance. So if I go into Battle Stance, if I click this macro, voila, I'm in Berserker Stance, and if I click it again, fucking magic, Berserker Rage applies. So again, this is something that you want to be using with just about every single skill of yours, and there is sort of another way of doing this, which fundamentally operates differently, I suppose. I don't know, it's fucking bullshit. Anyway, so instead of switching the stance based on the skill you want to use, you can switch the skill based on the stance you're in, if that's not confusing too much. So I have this one macro, one specific macro. I can't find another place where to use this. So this one is Overpower, Revenge, and Whirlwind. So the way this works is if I'm in stance 1, I will use Overpower. If I'm in stance 2, I will use Revenge. If I'm in stance 3, I will use Whirlwind. So since I'm a tank, I never need to really like, you know, do the quick stance dancing for an Overpower potential proc. Because, you know, I don't care about my DPS meters, I'm a fucking tank. So I can get away with this macro. I can see Zugzugs using this for maybe like shield wall and recklessness. I don't know, just think for yourself. Anyway, so the way this macro works is if I switch my stance, a different skill appears. So, you know, battle stance I have Overpower, defensive stance I have Revenge, Berserker stance you have Whirlwind, fucking magic. And that's pretty much it for the theory. So jumping back to the actual UI that I use, to the macros that I use, let's just go them, you know, one at a time. So the first one is what I call a shouting macro. You know, it's even called like in fucking caps lock. Brilliant, I know, fucking genius. Anyway, so what this macro does is nothing more than clean up my UI. So if I press R, I will use Demo Shout. If I press Shift R, I will use Battle Shout, and if I press Control R, I will use Blood Rage. All three of those skills kind of operates in the same way. Usually Battle Shout and Blood Rage is not something that you need to use like right fucking this moment, so I can hide them behind modifier. And then Demo Shout, since I do want to use this in like a clutch moment, you know, like on a Broodlord, for example, it falls off, I want to immediately fucking smash that button, so I just have it unmodified. So the next macro is Shield Block, and it achieves a couple of things. First, it selects the right stance. Second, it casts the skill. And fucking mage, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, and Third of all, it changes my gear because, you know, it's a shield block, it requires shield, it's fucking brilliant. Anyway, so if I use this skill right now, I'm in Berserker stance. If I use this, I went into defensive stance and changed my gear. Now, do note that due to weapon switching, there is some wonkiness regarding global cooldown, so this spell might not get cast immediately, so that's why it's one of those spammable skills. So let me just pay attention to this portion of the screen right now. If I press E, there's no error message right here. If I press E again, not enough rage. So that means the first time I pressed this, the shield block didn't even cast. If I spam this, however, there we go. Ability is not ready yet for a fraction of a second or whatever, and then not enough rage. So there is some wonkiness. Now, I suppose I should mention why I also changed my weapon. Why not only equip the shield, but change my weapon as well. As you can see, Kelsarar, which is, I don't know, maybe like superstition or something. But in a nutshell, I'm usually tanking dual wielding. So if I do shield block, shit is probably going south, and I just want every bit of extra mitigation that I can get. Kelsarar as a weapon, it's like as good as it gets for mitigation. It has some stamina, which, you know, will be useful after you get topped off. And then it does have a potential proc. It's not much, but if shit is going south, I'll just take every single piece of mitigation I can get. Now, Challenging Shout operates in the exact same way. These macros are pretty much identical. And then Shield Wall is a very similar as well. The only exception is that I have a same macro over here. So this actually works in a kind of interesting way. Yeah, it's just, you know, fucking shouts. You can do like a raid warning, whatever, instead of say, if that helps you, I don't know. So the reason why I really like the same macro is that, again, because of the wonkiness of the global cooldowns between switching the stance, casting the skill, and switching the gear, it's actually a few seconds, maybe a second, maybe two, delayed until you get your shield wall off. So what this macro does is, you know, it tells the entire raid, hey guys, please keep me alive for a few seconds longer. If you do that, shield wall is up, we'll be fucking Gucci. Now, the next skill is Taunt. Again, super important. The only, like, interesting thing about it is that I have both the non-target mouse over part and the mouse over part. I'm pretty sure this is just excessive, and if I just deleted this part specifically, this would function literally the same way, but I have it either way. It's just a really simple macro, really, but it's so fucking important that I have to show it. Now, next up, if we go into something that's a tad more complicated, we have Charge macro. And this, just like shield block, for example, achieves a number of things. So first of all, depending on the stance, you know, there's stance dancing. If I press charge, I go into battle stance. Now, however, since this also has a modifier shift macro included, if I press shift 4, I go into berserker stance. So shift 4 is intercept, 4 is charge. It cleans up my UI, and just, you know, both skills do charge. It's so much easier to remember them. I really don't need separate buttons for them. Now, the last thing that this does, actually nothing else. Oh yeah, there's a target mouse over included as well. So just kind of a clusterfuck of macro. And a very similar one that I use is actually for interrupt. So this one is pretty much the same deal, where again, depending on the stance, I will switch to the right stance. In this case, shield bash can be used in both battle and defensive, so it's kind of a bit wonky. But if I press shift 5, then I go into berserker stance, obviously. Now, next up, what's interesting about this macro is that not only there's like a double stance dancing, you know, between shield bash stance dancing and pummel stance dancing, there's also a gear change if I go into defensive stance. So if I just spam pummel, it does nothing. If I remove my shifts, I have shield bash and I press shield bash, it throws me an error that I have to equip a shield, and if I press it again, I think it works. I just fucking missed the error message. Let's try that again. Shield, there we go. So this is again something wonky about the global cooldown, so it's a spammable macro. You just spam it and it will get the job done. It is kind of clusterfucky, so I don't know, just copy and paste it from the video's description. And as far as those macros go, this is actually about it. Like all the other macros visible here, they're either something that I've showed somewhere in this video, like for example this Overpower Revenge Whirlwind one, or there's something very simple, like the Stance Dance for Rent. That's it, you don't need to really add anything to Rent. Maybe like a target mouse over, I don't fucking know, hamstring, same shit. So yeah, this is how my actual UI looks like. I pretty much have everything macroed. It allows me again to achieve so many things, from being loved by the healers to quicker taunts to never thinking about so many fucking key bindings to cleaning up my UI. It's just fucking better, alright? So with that, I will wrap up this video. Thank you guys for watching. I don't know, tune in some other day. Maybe I'll make more videos. Maybe I'll kill myself. Fuck knows. Anyway, bye.